In this video, we'll start with understanding the components of Python programming. When I say components of Python programming, what do I mean? Let's take an example of English. When you started to learn English, what did you start with? You started to understand the alphabets, what are words, what are sentences, how to frame sentences, what is a paragraph, and so on and so forth. What is a full stop, what are punctuation marks, and stuff like that. Similarly, in any programming language also, we need to understand the basic building blocks of that programming language. Those are nothing but the components of programming language. The first component that we'll be looking at in this video are literals. What is literal? Literal is defined as the value or the data that are used while we write any program. For example, when you write a program, the program can consist of a number of data, right? Let's say somebody's name, somebody's age, somebody's phone number, and somebody's address, or something you want to display in the output as a message, right? All these are nothing but certain data. So data that is involved in our program is called literal. For example, let's say somebody's name is John, right? So John is some data. Now John's age is 25. 25 is some data. John's phone number is 9999 something. That is a data, right? And John is a student, right? Is a student. That's some information about John. And he studies 5 subjects, right? And scores grade B. B is the grade that he scores in a certain semester or exam. So all these are nothing but data, right? So let's take some example. Let's open the idle IDE quickly and we'll try to understand literals. Before we go into it, let's configure our idle. Go to options, configure idle, and we will increase the font for better visibility. All right. I hope this looks good. Now, when we see that certain data is required, right? For example, we saw that John was a data. It was the name of some person. Age, like 20 was the age of that person, right? That's a data, right? So we can classify data in different types. For example, numbers or numeric data, right? So numeric data is what? Which is in numbers. It could be whole numbers or fraction numbers. So the first kind of literal that we look at is numeric. For example, if I write 1000 here and press enter, this is the Python idle console, it will give me 1000 back. It does not give an error, means it has worked properly. So 1000 is a numeric value, right? So it is called a numeric literal. The specific name of this is integer, right? What are integers? Integers are nothing but whole numbers. What are whole numbers? You must have studied in mathematics, right? Non-fractional numbers are whole numbers. So 1000 is a numeric literal, specifically integer. Now, integers can be positive numbers, negative whole numbers, or 0. So when I write, let's say, minus 500, this is also a integer literal. Even 0 is an integer literal. So any number, negative, positive, or 0 is a integer literal. All right, whole numbers. Now, the second type of numerical literal is float. Now, what is a float? Float is defined as the numbers which are fractional numbers or have decimal points, right? Float, floating point numbers or float, right? Decimal, let's say 3.14, right? 22.7 pi is 3.14, right? Somebody got 91.5 as the percent, 91.5 is the float. All right. So Python supports float numbers as well. 3.14, 91.5, minus 5.89, right? Negative numbers with decimal points are also floats. All right. Now, I have a question. So we understood what is a integer and what is a float. Now tell me, what is 10.0? 10.0 looks like a number which does not have a fractional part, right? It is 10.0. The fractional part is 0. But it is classified into floats and not into integers because we have a decimal point written here. So if any number, even though it is 10.0, the decimal part is 0, if you put 0.0 in front of it, it becomes a float. And 10 is an integer. So what are the examples in real life that you can use this data or these kind of literals? Integer literals can be used to store some kind of a phone number, right? Or somebody's age, full age, not in fraction, but full age, right? Floating point literals or the float literals can be used to store somebody's marks or percentages, right? So these two are the numerical literals. Next, we will see what are string literals. When we say string literals are used for basically storing some kind of names, messages, paragraphs, sentences. All right. So string literals are nothing but a sequence of or a group of characters, right? For example, a simple word could be a string literal. Let's say hello. So hello is a string literal. When I press enter, see what happens? It gives an error. But I'm saying hello is a string literal. But why we are getting an error? Python says hello is not defined. The meaning is Python is not able to understand this value. So one important thing about string literals is string literals are sequence of characters, correct? But they should be enclosed within quotes or quotations. When I say quotes or quotations, they are either single quote, double quotes, or triple quotes. So triple quotes can be in 2 ways. Single triple quotes you can use or double triple quotes you can use. All 4 are examples of string literals. The value still remains the same. The value is still hello. But these 4 ways we can use to create a string literal. Only the quotation differs. All right, let's take this example. Hello. double quotes, hello, triple quote, hello, again double triple quote, hello. Now we don't get any error. Why? Because Python understands the string literal within quotations. Now what if I write something like this? I start with a single quote and end the string with a double quote. Will it work? It does not work. It says syntax error unterminated string literal. Now Python is not able to understand whether it is terminated or not. It's actually terminated according to us, but since we started writing hello with a single quote, it has to finish with single quote itself. Until you write a single quote, Python will think that is not terminated, it's not a full string literal. Okay? So this was an example of a single word. A string literal can be a sentence as well. For example, hello everyone, we are learning Python. So if you see, I started with a double quote, I have to end with a double quote. You can have a full stop here if you want. So this is a string value or string data. All right. One question might arise in your head that if we have a single quote and a double quote, why do we need these triple quotes? Right? Let's see that. Let's say I want to create a value in multi-lines. Let's say hello, and if I try to go to the next line, it gives me an error. So if you want to create multi-line strings, the single quote and the double quote will not work. To write multi-line string values, you have to write either a single quoted triple quote or a double quoted triple quote. For example, hello, comma, how are you? Let's learn Python. And let's end it with the double triple quote. And if you see, it works fine. Now, one thing you observe here, in the output, this is the output that we get when we write the string. You don't see the output in different lines. Rather, you see it in the single line, and wherever there is a next line used, something called /n is used in the screen, right? So this /n is a special character in Python, which is used to represent the new line or the next line. Okay, this is also called escape sequence or the new line character. Both /n together are called new line or next line character. All right. So now we'll look at the next literal, which is called the Boolean literal. Okay. So let's try to understand what is a Boolean literal. Boolean literals have only two values in them, right? True and false. As the name suggests, the Boolean literals are used in cases wherein you have to check certain conditions, right? Whether, let's say I make a statement, right? Like Mark makes a statement. Mark is a person. He makes a statement as, hi, I am Mark, right? So when Mark says I am Mark, he is telling the truth. So true will represent that statement, right? It's a true statement. And when Mark says, hey, I am John. No, Mark is not John, right? It's a false statement made by Mark. So in that case, false will be used, right? So Booleans are, these two values in Booleans are used for basically checking certain conditions. Actually, when we write certain conditions in Python, we get either a true or a false. And depending on that, these two values, we will be doing certain actions. We'll see in details how true and false are used. At this moment, let's just understand there are two values, true and false, which are called Booleans. And if you note here, T and F in this case are capitals. All right. True. False. You cannot write T small. If you write T small, it will say, I don't understand what you're saying. Did you mean true with T capital? All right. So what do we understand by Boolean? Booleans are two values, true and false. These values are to represent yes or a no kind of a answer, right? Now, there's another literal called the special literal or none. Now, what is none? None is said to be a special literal which is used to represent no value or an empty value or a null value, which means it's not a value. When there are situations wherein you don't know what the value is. You don't know whether it's a number, it's a marks, it's a name of someone, it's the age of someone. You don't know what the data of it and what is that data. Then in those cases, you'll be using none. All right. This is called a special literal. And none also is represented as N capital O N E small. All right. If you see, when I write false, I get a false in return by the idle IDE. But here, nothing is getting printed or displayed because it is to represent nothing, right? Or no value. All right. As I mentioned, none also is case sensitive. If you write N small N-O-N-E, it says not defined. Python does not understand what is small N-O-N-E. N has to be capital. So what did we learn? We learned about literals, which is one of the basic building blocks of a programming language, or basically in this case, Python programming language, right? We understood the first building block, which is the data, right? And what are the different types or kinds of data Python supports, which is numeric. In numeric, we understood what is integer value or is float value. And then we learned if you want to write certain messages or paragraphs or sentences or certain kind of names of someone, we use the string literal. And there are two more literals. One is the Boolean literal having two values, true and a false, and a special literal having the value of none, which represents no value in Python. That's all for this video. Thank you.